And I would also like to say good afternoon. And I would also like to say good afternoon. Okay, thank you very much. Good morning once again, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, depending on wherever you're joining us today, all across the world. My name is Ayomide Olajide, and I'm the Director General of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce. It is a pleasure to have you join us today, and I do welcome you to the Professional Services Group event, themed Workforce Recruitment, Retention, and the Rise of the Gig Economy. I am also delighted to have our council, executive council members, and our distinguished speakers, as well as distinguished guests joining us today. Now, before we proceed, may I ask that we please observe the national anthems for Nigeria and Britain. Thank you. Sincere apologies for that. We'll take the national anthems again. 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 We do apologize for that technical glitch. I think we'll just move along. Just to give you a bit of some guidelines for today's webinar, please, if your volume is too low, kindly check your system volume. The webinar is being recorded and it's going to be available on our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to your YouTube channel, please kindly do so. To make comments, kindly use the chat icon. Submit your questions and answers in the Q&A icon, that's just below your screen. And please ensure to fill the feedback form, which will be included in the chat box. Thank you very much for listening. To take us through the next segment, I would like to invite our Deputy President, Mr. Ray Ateli, FRPA, to take us through the welcome address. Thank you very much.
Yes, once again, thank you very much, DG. We have wrestled with technology this morning, but I'm sure at the end of the day we'll win. On behalf of the President and Chairman of Council, BC Adeyemi, I present this address.
Yes, once again, thank you very much. We have wrestled with technology this morning, but I'm sure at the end of the day we'll win. On behalf of the President and Chairman of Council, BC Adeyemi, I present this
Once again, good morning, members who are present at this moment, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to welcome you to this Professional Services Group event with the theme Workforce Recruitment, Retention, and the Rise of the Gig Economy. I'm particularly delighted to welcome all who are participating at our event for the first time. Let me quickly introduce the Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce to those who may not know so much about us. The chamber was established in 1977 to promote trade and investments between Nigeria and Britain. The chamber currently has over 400 members, drawn from diverse sectors of the economy in Nigeria and in Britain as well. We are an international affiliate of the British Chamber of Commerce, the BCC, which gives us access to a network of 53 chambers of commerce across the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, and 71 other international affiliates around the world. In other words, it's a very big family you are participating in. Thanks to the spread of the internet, the traditional workforce has already undergone significant changes. Things like the email and telecommunications have made work more flexible and brought people together, even if they are geographically apart. It has also enabled the rise of what is now called the gig economy. I'm sure we'll find out what this means today from our panelists. Today, people have more flexibility in their employment models. They no longer have to rely on the classic 9-to-5 models of old to provide for themselves. Instead, they can embrace a more creative and efficient work life, taking on short-term work at will or need. Thus, the flexibility is behind the growth of what we call this gig economy. The gig economy is about exchanging labor or expertise for money between individuals or companies through digital platforms mostly that directly connects suppliers of expertise or labor and customers on a short-term basis, and they pay more conveniently. Both parties win. The gig economy has ballooned in recent years as different apps arrived to tackle nearly every facet of the service industry. The changes introduced or forced upon us by COVID have only accelerated the gig economy's growth. As people staying home and minimizing contact opted for personal home deliveries for many of their daily chores and consumer necessities. According to a report by MasterCard, global transactions associated with the gig economy will grow by 17% per year to about $455 billion in the year 2023. But why does the gig economy have such a great impact on the future of work? Why is it changing the culture of the workplace, especially in our climes? And what opportunities does it present for both businesses and workers? These and more we hope to hear from our team of experienced panelists. Once again, I welcome you to this webinar. All is well that ends well, and I'm very sure that at the end, you would gain a thing or two from the experts that are going to be speaking to us. And talking about the experts, we have Mr. Baba Olokolaro, the managing partner of the New Practice, who is also a member of the professional services group that put this event together. He is going to be moderating, and so it will be his responsibility when I'm done to anchor this event and pose those questions that you would like answered. And to answer them, we have Mrs. Lola Esson, who is the Workforce Advisory Services Leader for West Africa at EY Consulting. We equally have Mr. David Brown, who is the Managing Partner at Deep Brown Consulting, we have Ms. Titilayo Akisoya, who is the CEO of and the executive coach at Theta Alpha Consults Limited. We equally have Ms. Erefa Fine Country, who is the founder of HR Expo Africa. And so you could see that we have a star-studded panel, and I therefore invite you to listen and get a tip or two from these experts. Thank you very much for participating at today's webinar. From BC Adeyemi, President and Chairman of Council, NBCC.
Thank you very much, Mr. Telly. Please, can we give him a virtual clap? You can use the features below. So I think we'll just hand over now to Mr. Baba Alokolaro to start the panel discussion. Over to you.
Good morning, DG. Good morning, Vice President. Good morning, all ladies and gentlemen. I say a very big good morning to you all and welcome to this panel discussion discussing workplace recruitment, retention, and the rise of the gig economy. I actually thought that I was going to manage to escape discussing what the gig economy was because myself in particular was not really aware what the gig economy was, but I had to learn very quickly. Now, the Vice President has just literally taken us through what the gig economy is, but practicalizing it a bit. Several years ago, if you bought a flight ticket and you needed to change your ticket date or time or cancel the ticket, you literally have to go to a physical office of the airline, perhaps British Airways or any other airline. Fast forward to 2022, you only need to pick up the telephone to call a number. That call will probably be passed through to a call center, and you may notice that the person you're speaking to has an Indian accent or an American accent or a British accent or an accent you're not accustomed to. Generally, what happens is that the several businesses like the airlines have created jobs for many people in different parts of the world that have literally taken on short-term jobs. Literally, what they're doing is literally freelance people taking on these roles helps them to manage their own time and space and work. They're independent contractors, probably working on an online platform, and it's temporary. It works well for them. It works well for the businesses. They're not carrying that labor baggage. They're not holding on to liability for HR stuff. Probably they don't have pension obligations, and it just works well. So modern day world globally has moved on from the traditional brick and mortar businesses, and particularly in the technology sector where our current generation find themselves working the more. That sector happens to be one that is changing our economies locally and internationally and has come to stay. The platform we're using now is one of such. Now, I don't particularly think technology has taken over yet, as we could see from the little glitches we had starting the session. The human factor is still largely in control for now, but we're all learning how to move on to the next phase, particularly so because of what we've learned in the last 3 years. So this morning I've got experts in the HR space, in the talent retention and talent acquisition space that they're going to share knowledge and share their experience with us. They need no introduction. They've been introduced already. And so in kicking off today's proceedings, I will ask them all to please turn on their cameras so we can begin the session. We have Mrs. Titilayo Akisoya, we have Mrs. Erefa Koka, who has been referred to several times as Miss Fine Country, but Fine Country is her maiden name, as I've been advised. So she's Mrs. Koka. We have Mr. David Brown, who, for the purposes of inclusion, has joined me so I'm not outnumbered by the women. Ladies and gentlemen, we will start our session. And my first question will go to Mrs. Koka. Mrs. Koka, there's a local problem that we have in Nigeria. It's called the Japa phenomenon. What does Japa mean? Every young Nigerian wants to get out of this country. In fact, a very at the pulpit said we must all have a plan B. If he says we must all have a plan B, you can imagine the impact on the younger people. Now, forget that we don't have roads, but we have no hospitals. We have no electricity. And then, worst of all, there is no money. The cost of diesel is, we don't even want to discuss that. And you want these young people to stay in this country, earning how much? And then you have international businesses saying, you know what, if you work at a tech company, I'm Google, stay in Nigeria. I will hire you. I will pay you in dollars. How do you compete? How do Nigerian businesses, whether in professional services organizations or otherwise, get to not even attract now, retain their talent? Because the competition is just it's too much. How do you compete against the dollar? How do you compete against a better environment where I can put my children in a good school without having to break the bank to pay for it, where I know that healthcare will be provided? I mean, I don't want to start answering your questions, but all we have locally are problems. And the solution appears to be outside the country. How can you help an organization save itself from this problem? That's my question to you. That's my question to you, Mrs. Koka. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'll start by the pastor who said that we should have a plan B. Scumbag is my pastor, actually. And he said, no more plan B. We have to fix Nigeria. So let me correct that impression, first of all. So no plan B. We're not. And it's funny, when I saw David's tweet yesterday, he wrote about the Japa. And a client asked me once, because I outsource talent from Nigeria to different markets across the world, but they work in Nigeria, so I'm guilty. And he asked me what the Nigerian dream was, and I said, Japa. He said, he asked me, I said, the Nigerian dream of any youngster is to leave Nigeria. And he asked me why. And I'll come back. We also have a company, we did something in Rwanda. And one of the things my colleagues came back to tell me was that the people in Rwanda are not even looking to leave their country. It doesn't even come into, they're not going to the passport office the way we go to the passport office or do everything. They're not leaving. Obviously, things work better. So without going through all the infrastructural problems and all the things that we can do to retain people in Nigeria, we have to look at the employers. How do we retain our talent? How do we compete with the Gen Z who are gig stars? That's what they are. That's what they want to do. They want to freelance and they don't have the time. Sometimes in recruitment, there's something we call ghosting. Before, it was employees used to chase recruiters for feedback. Now, candidates will ghost you. You give them a job, they won't even go back to the job. So all sort of things, and discuss this, as I said, there's so much. If you're very good, if you look at the tech market, right? It's so expensive to hire tech people in America, in the UK, and then the other people that give you competition are India or Ukraine. Now, a small startup in the US, which has not even raised any funding, is looking for ways to have cheaper talent. So if they pay $20 an hour, $10 an hour, Nigerians will rush at the jobs and everything. But it's also important for us to know that we're social beings, right? So people still need to interact in the workplace. They need to have colleagues that they can see. So how do local employers compete with the market? I'll say that first, let's start with our employer brand. let's start with employer brand. How do you, there's some brands that once they put up their adverts, whether you have a job with, yes, Google or something, if they approach you, you still think about it and say, oh, let me see what they have on offer. Obviously, salary is always a motivating factor. So our employer brand is something that is important. We need to, and the best people that speak about your organization are your current and your past employees. What do they have to say about you? So you might be a small business, but you find some small businesses, they have top talent. And when their talent leave, they even find people for them. And so my old employer is in recruiting, this is what you can do. So in retention, we have to work on our employee brand. We have to sort of build our internal culture. We have to focus on mental well-being of our employees. And we have to be flexible in the way we think. I'll use an example. One of my friends asked me, oh, who did all our graphics? And I said, oh, we have an internal graphics person. And then I reached out to my internal graphics person. Obviously, I know that he does side gigs. And I said to him, oh, my friend wants to do some graphics. As long as it doesn't affect your job, I'm going to introduce you to him. And he's doing something for my friend. So I think that the conventional way of us saying, we write that thing in our employment letter, you cannot do any other job across blah, 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 blah. It's they're doing it. So why don't you have an open conversation with your employee? My internal graphics person is a 23, 24-year-old boy who is doing so well. How many graphics is he doing for us? It's probably on Fiverr on Upwork, which I wouldn't know, except I'm going to search for him. So if I come to him and I can give him additional job, if he's not busy, if it doesn't affect his output, obviously, I'm not saying everybody can afford to do that. I'm just thinking that we need to be flexible. We need to know that these guys have multiple jobs. One of my clients said to me that people are moonlighting that some of the tech people they have are moonlighting across different organizations. There are people working for them. They want to be sure that the people that we hire in Nigeria is not moonlighting for them. I'm thinking, there's no way, except we're going to go across all this platform and start searching for them one way or the other. So we need to be flexible. We need to build a trust within our organization. We need to have those kind of conversations. We need to have open conversations. What can we do better? How can we build our culture? Obviously, if somebody is asking you to pay them $10,000 a month, that's not going to fly. But outside of money, what can we build? How do we make our employee brand the brand of choice to work with? How do we ensure that and it starts from everything from our candidate acquisition. How do we treat, how is our candidate experience before we move to our employee experience? So if somebody applies for your job, this is a candidate-driven market now. It's not the days where HR people think they're thank God. When people apply for a job, we are treating them as if they're coming to, because of the unemployment in the labor market. But the current workforce that we have, they're not ready for that. You're even chasing them. And if they come to you, you're wasting their time, they go away. And guess what? They're on Twitter, tweeting about their experience about your organization. So that's another negative thing. So we have to consider the whole employment from the scratch. How do we define the role? When we're sourcing the candidate, how do we treat the candidate? We are not God. It's a two-way street. We want to find good employees, and employees want to find good employers. And when they get onto the job, what is the culture that we're building? How can we retain them? If somebody's talking about, I've got issues with my mental health, who are they going to talk to? Do we have things like that? And there are issues. These young kids have a lot of issues to deal with, their mental issues. We have grown to live with it or sort of hide it, but they don't hide it. They talk about it. So when they come and talk about it and say, you know what, I'm taking the day off, I need to be able to, you shouldn't penalize them for taking the day off. We're not used to it. So what do you mean take the day off to go and do stuff like that? So it's just rejigging the whole thing and there's no one-way street to retaining talent in this current economy. Current platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, you just put it as it truly is. There's the trust factor, there's building culture, there's the fact that you now have to be more flexible and you have to allow creativity. Otherwise, you will go out of business in real terms. But it also seems to me as if there's employee power now. The employees and prospective employees are now stronger than the businesses. They now have the power of the telephone, of the touchpad. I know of instances where, in my sector, which is a legal space, an employee sues his employer for whatever reasons that it was. And he literally had his employers kowtowing to his whims because he had the power of the telephone and he started tweeting. And, because the older generation are not well attuned and accustomed to the impact of social media and how damaging it can be, we get worried. We don't know what to do. We are afraid. And then we end up bending over backwards to accommodate largely something like serious indiscipline. And I'll come back to that with disciplinary issues in the workplace and retention and what have you. But Mr. So I'm going to come to you now. And now this for me is that, the job market is in a space that it has never been before. Employers are struggling to retain their best. They are even struggling to retain their worst. They are just struggling, I don't know. It's truly never happened before. In the legal workspace, in the legal space, in the law firm space, we're poaching each other's staff. We're struggling to keep the ones that we have. We're looking across the fence to see who is good. The ones that are not that good, we're even managing to just pet them and say, how are you? Let me rub your head small. Are you okay? Mental health issues. We need to make sure that we're sensitive to those. But for me, the employees are particularly that our current day employees are younger, and they're tuned to leaving jobs for various reasons. But the time span of staying in a job generationally used to be maybe your first job, maybe it's 5 years. For older folk, 10 years. You get a golden wristwatch when you go. But from my conversation, Mrs. Akiso, she I think about a month ago, she said, "Don't fool yourself. These guys are ready to leave in 18 months. Now, how can I build my business with a workforce that I know that in less than 18 months, he or she is leaving? Even though I'm building employee culture, as Mrs. Coker has said, how do I build that culture, imbibe that culture with people that are just, are just coming and going, coming and going, coming and going? How do I, how do I safeguard against that, opening, that risk of I employ you, I train you, I get it, I invest in you, but you're out in 6 months or 12 months because a competitor in the particular space or a bigger firm, maybe one of the big four, like your firm, or even an international organization comes for them. That's my question to you, Ms. Desson.
Thank you so much. An interesting conversations and a great foundation to build on EREFA. So I think the first thing is to accept that it's the reality. I think the conversation is now a bit, it's long drawn now to say they're leaving, what do we do? It's, as you've pointed out, how do I really build something large out of not a lot? And in truth, 2 years is now the next 10 years. But what I find is a lot of us are very emotional about the concept of employment, and it shouldn't be. If we accept that people these days are looking for, would structure work in such a way that if I'm hiring you to do something to do or do what you need to do for me, without the feeling of I own you, you are my employee. EREFA talked about moonlighting, and one of the places I used to work, that was definitely the reality. We ran a survey in 2017 and realized that about 70% of our young staff below manager grade were active moonlighters. So in one particular year, they had such an ingenious idea where the staff calendar at the time was really all employees showing you in your suits and then showing you doing your other thing. So whenever there were events, cake, makeup, whatever, it came from there. So I think the first thing is structuring work such that we understand that people would come to you with many skills, many capabilities, and that we would need to do all we can do to put that experience up front. Now, nobody's suggesting that you ask people to begin to jump around, because it's actually possible to get the sum total of experiences you're looking for in one organization. So for example, where I work now, I'm a partner, but every couple of years, they find opportunities for you to do something else on top of what you do. We found out that people were leaving because, hey, they're going to do masters. So now we're offering free MBAs from a major school. We found out that sometimes people say, oh, I want to learn other skills and this work isn't giving me the chance to do that. So we are now offering you opportunities to get courses in different areas. Over the lockdown, I took a course on bead making, fully paid for. So I think the first thing is to understand that people are coming to you with different needs and interests. Of course, we're not asking that you run a creche, because how then do you justify or support actually one, reorganize the concept of what work means? So for starters, let's stop holding benefits or enjoyment or things until 5 years, 10 years. The concept of a very tall career ladder is no longer sustainable, because people are looking, you ask the average where do you see yourself in 5 years? And they'll tell you this how. So we've got to make sure, one, the concept of the grading system really changes. I also have seen from my own environment, because we suffer from unbelievable attrition, that it helps to also organize work differently. So rather than have work in a case where, oh, this person reports to this manager, this supervisor, we structure the work in teams. So project-based work, so people can come to responsibility and experiences pretty early, as against waiting their turn or starting out by photocopying, then going on to do other things. The other thing I think is quite important is to really be very, what I'd like to call, open about what the concept of trust means for your organization. So trust is the currency of the new business, of modern business. And it's not about, I pay you my salary. It's not enough. You need to understand what the demographics of employment or your employees want. So today we're finding out about 70% or more millennials in a global survey will tell you that rather than work for organizations that work in a fancy sector or pay a lot of money, they are paying attention to bigger issues such as sustainability. So what is the impact of what you do beyond money on the environment? So you can see that we're now catering for a new generation that wants a portfolio of ideas. And by the way, I tend to not subscribe to the group that this particular group of young talents are not loyal. It's a question of times have changed. And so the needs, the preferences, the opinion has changed. So if you're going to hire adults, you obviously must engage the adults in how you manage them. So I think a lot more conversation as to how you want to be managed. Because you might, and I saw some people, for example, in Nigeria, we're still stuck in the mode of offering standardized benefits. You still need to get HMO for wife and 4 children. But these days, people don't want to have children. They don't. So, but rather, okay, can I give that to my auntie, my uncle, or the NGO I support? We'll say, oh, no, you must take the standardized benefits. So you can't be offering standardized benefits for a very diverse workforce. All of those will also need to change. The other thing is, and truth be told, I tend to think, look, the natural human being would always wonder what else is out there. So we need to move beyond, I'm a great company. I mean, there are a lot of companies who are still building on the strengths of yesteryears. Once upon a time, if you left school today, oh, you're praying to get a job in oil and gas because historically they paid the best. These days, oil and gas, they're struggling to keep talent because it's like people are thinking, okay, the impact of your industry on the environment is not good enough. Then studies are showing that a lot of those people, because they work in a bubble, when they leave employment, they haven't been prepared for a world outside of that type of employment. So they struggle. So there are lots of studies to show that we are catering to a different type of workforce. But I think I'll just summarize my closing remarks by saying, first thing is, as employers, we need to stop being emotional about what it is to offer employment. We also need to make sure we do not cave into a situation where we train one person to the detriment of others because the person appears to be a superstar. That is also a problem. So we've got to do all of these things to make sure that at the end of the day, and then I'm sorry, we should also make sure we extract maximum value. Pay people well and structure the work well such that they can do the work and give you the value you seek. So that way, both of us come to the relationship knowing that it's not a family thing. It's purely symbiotic. We're both looking to get something out of it, but pay me well, respect the fact that 2 years is 10 years. So don't keep a gold watch, deep freezer and all of that for me because you're wasting your time. Give me what I want, what is my due today and now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. So, gold wristwatch, some people look forward to it. That handshake, 10 years is now the 2 years. We need to build on trust. We need to engage more. We need to structure our businesses differently. We need to stop being emotional about these issues. And I mean, EY, one of the big four, she's just said it to you, the attrition level is high. It's high for all of them. It's high for all of us. And I'm going to come to you, David, now. You just heard of you, David Brown. As I said, she's coming from one of the big four, and they used to be the threat to businesses like mine. We thought, okay, who's your biggest competitor? And in my space, would say it is, or it was, the big four. It seems the case has now changed, or is changing, as they're suffering just as much as we are, and they're suffering the same plight. Now, what has your business done to keep and retain your superstars, your star talent? If you don't mind sharing with us.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for that. So I came from the big four, one of the big four, big five then, before Enron happened to Anderson. So it's interesting because the big four are having huge attrition. The attrition is the actual jackpot to Canada most times. Then our firm is having attrition to the big four. Our kind of firms are having attrition to the big four as the big four try and fill up those gaps. So, and then firms also kind of, let's say, below us are having attrition. So it's that attrition chain. It's like an attrition chain that's happening. But at the end of the day, what's happening is we're exporting talent. So Nigeria is exporting talent at a huge scale, right? And this is going to continue. And it's usually that's usually what happens in a developing economy. So we export oil, we export stuff. We don't know that we're exporting talent. We don't know, but we are exporting talent. We may not be making money from that export, but we are exporting talent. And that's a completely different conversation as to if we're actually going to become a manufacturer of talent, our universities and stuff, and there's actual routes to go out directly from there as we export talent and improve our educational system and still retain some of them here. So that's a completely different conversation. But what have we been doing? So for us in our firm, it's more of the same things that we've heard here. But I would say what we've implemented is maybe that has really helped is an open book management strategy. And what does that mean? So open book management is all the financials, everything is shared with every employee. So every single thing we do, how we make money, how we lose money, how profitable we are, everything is shared with employees on a regular basis. So every employee understands what's happening, can see whether we're not making money, can see that this project actually made a loss. How did it make a loss? What's our salaries? What's everything? We see it all. So one important thing for employees to be able to, for you to be able to have employees that kind of are tuned to that is culture. So you recruit for culture. You don't recruit for skill. So you don't recruit, this guy is very sharp, very excellent. You recruit for culture, and that culture fit is so important. So HR is like the #1 department in your organization, because at the end of the day, that's the gateway for people to come into your organization. And immediately you see certain traits. Let's assume somebody falls through the cracks, right? I was doing, we had a ceremony for one of the dons of the consulting industry, which is the Cream, a couple of days ago. And he kind of instituted this, if I remember that Bali, that when you're recruiting, you should use the Bali principle. What's the Bali principle? You recruit for brains, you recruit somebody that has brains. There's also leadership, there's integrity, and the A is ambition. So brains, ambition, leadership, and integrity. Now, of course, you need people that are smart and people that are trainable, not that they already know the job. So they're trainable, you have that attitude, they're trainable, great. And then, of course, that's ambition. Now, when you have someone with ambition, if you keep them in one place and they're doing the same thing, they will leave. If they stop learning, they will leave. So first of all, get the culture thing right. So you bring that guy with the right culture, lead with the right culture, right? And then take that value in the brains. Yes, they have that, and you continue to do training. So learning should be a part of you as an organization, continuous learning. Then that ambition, if you do not look at that ambition well and say, okay, what does that ambition mean? It doesn't mean money. Many people make a mistake that, oh, you must earn money. Ambition could be also recognition, right? I want recognition. I want to be an expert in my field. I want to be recognized as an expert. Our firm, for example, has the highest, maybe the highest MVPs in Nigeria. MVPs is most valuable professional. Microsoft gives an award, most valuable professional. We basically had 5 MVPs go through us. The whole of Nigeria has 10. So it's 5 have gone through our firm. So why is that? Because we allow them to do a lot of community work. They do a lot of things that they find, is it boost? I think Erefa said boost. So that's like a boost strategy, right? Where you're giving them as much as possible to be able to express themselves to the world. Go on LinkedIn, write articles, basically go for this talk. You want to go to somewhere else in another country for a talk? Yeah, we support that. Oh, you want to take a day off for that talk? Yes. So you are boosting that, and that's the ambition side. The leadership, try as much as possible to give them leadership projects, give them an opportunity to lead as quickly as possible. Not when they become manager or leaders directly, but put them in projects. I think Lola talked about that, where putting them in projects to actually lead and show that they can have those leadership skills and learn. And then, of course, you need integrity. So that integrity again comes down to that recruitment. You cannot. And I give you an example. As somebody he was probably employed, and we did a check. We did a general check before finally employed, and heard that the person was still working. So it's one of those people that were still moonlighting and stuff and didn't let us know. And so we didn't recruit him. And it took like 6 months to get this guy. But we just couldn't take him in. And he argued, and I said, all you need to do was tell us. That's all, just tell us. So you can't compromise on those. And yes, we can't afford to pay the Googles. I mean, a colleague, an excellent staff came and said, okay, Microsoft in Washington gave him an offer. Now we congratulated him, yeah? And we, in fact, we're good friends. I mean, in the last session, he was there with us. So at the end of the day, right, people would leave, but they'll become your ambassadors. So they'll become solid ambassadors to you. We have people writing to us, wanting to work with us. Can we pay them as much as the Googles and stuff? No, but the culture, that culture thing, that openness thing, that trust thing, that I know, okay, yes, we know where we are. During the pandemic, we raised salaries. During the pandemic, we raised pay. We didn't lose pay for a single month. And of course, we borrowed money, right? But at the end of the day, that's just the culture you build. So there's this thing that the 8 Bs of talent strategy. I don't know if you know those 8 Bs. I know if I know most of them. We've talked about some already. Boost. There's even boggle, right? You boggle talent. You actually steal talent. It's not as if it's a bad thing. Netflix, that was their strategy. People go to Seattle for a reason. They go and steal talent from Microsoft and stuff. So it's part of your strategy. But I'm not saying. So it's at the end of the day, talent is moving. But one important thing as well is to reduce waste, because at the end of the day, it's not only about revenues. We're wasting a lot of time. We waste a lot of time in processes and stuff, and see how much you can outsource to a bot. When I say bots, it's AI. So all this fancy AI stuff, it's there with us right now. How much of this can you really outsource? Is this part of this person's role? Must it be part of this person's role? What's the biggest bang per buck you can get out of an hour of everybody's time, right? So that the staff themselves are happy, and then you are actually reducing your cost per hour. So ask yourself, how productive is your company? Divide your revenue by the total number of hours that you actually work and see what your general revenue per man hour or person hour is. So you would see that you could actually improve efficiency. And a lot of these things are cheaper to do by actually either outsourcing. So even those jackpot people, you outsource certain roles, or you actually use a bot. You actually find a way of automating certain aspects. So those are ideas. Those are things that we've done. It's not easy. But one key thing as well is try and export your service. So I said it before, we're exporting talent. Well, why are you exporting talent? Because those people abroad want that talent. Okay, export your service. Since if the talent are here doing that service, export your service. You don't only need to export hard things like food items and stuff. Export your service. Go online and compete on proposals in America and Canada and whatever, and actually get those jobs, which you can do virtually, especially for us in the service sector. So people like EY can't, unfortunately, because there's an EY there and they can't kind of cross, but people like us can, right? So why not? Let's export service.
Very well put, David Brown. Incident, and there's a thing about culture that employees of businesses become ambassadors of that business even after they've left. And I could see the shine on your face when you said big five before Enron, which tells me you're an Anderson person. Incidentally, I'm also an Anderson person because my firm is the Anderson Collaborating Firm in Nigeria, along with Lea and Co. And whenever Anderson people need, there's always this thing about them. It's one of the things I've discovered. So I'm happy to be on this panel with you. And thank you so much for sharing the Bali principle, building culture, the 8 Bs, the fact that we now need to be a bit more sensitive to the ambitions of our employees. We need to take our eyes away from issues like moonlighting and stuff. As Lola had said earlier, we need to rethink and relearn our attitude in the workplace as employers. Now, we're really just talking about, our talent, and even if they're not talented, have star quality leaving. And, the exit door, when our employees are leaving, the HR professionals, the first time I heard about it was I had to have an exit interview. And I was like, what's that? What am I doing, going through an exit interview? I'm gone. What am I telling you about, how my experience was, here? And businesses tended to take the HR position and department for granted. In fact, back in the day when businesses were right-sizing, the departments to go initially were IT, HR, and the like. Today, it's at the risk of extinction that you will get rid of those kind of departments. So, Ms. Akiso, I'm coming to you. Can employers preempt the traditional exit interview, which naturally is reactive, by actually now proactively understanding how their employees feel and attempt to resolve those issues where possible before they make the decision to leave?
Okay, well, that's a good one. Well, let me start by saying exit interviews, really, if any organization has it in its traditional sense, that's old school. And when I say old school, I mean it's just that they haven't shifted. So the first thing I'd like to say is, listening to my colleagues, Mrs. Coker, David, Lola, all that they've said, obviously one thing is important. There is a mindset shift that we need to embrace across all organizations, regardless of our industries, regardless of our businesses. That mindset shift also means what got us here will not get us there. And a lot of it boils down to what I call rebalancing of power. But let me tell you a story, because obviously we're talking pedigrees here. My pedigree is from Accenture. I was brought in when Anderson was moving in to be called Accenture. And I remember sitting with Dr. Sulaiman, the managing partner then, and some of the partners, Bodia Shosami and the former Commissioner, Minister of Communications, Mobola Johnson. And I said, I think we need to change our value proposition when we bring in people. And they looked at me and said, what do I mean? And I told them, because again, remember, David, you spoke about culture. And here we were rebranding. And so in rebranding from Anderson to Accenture, the consulting arm, we needed to be mindful of what message are we passing on out there. And I said, well, the message or the rebranding starts with our new hire orientation program. So my story is this. When we have the new hire orientation program across any levels, especially the young analysts, I remember one of the things I say to them is, Accenture puts you in more boardrooms than you can ever imagine or think. And I remember the first day I said that, some of the partners looked at me as if, I'm talking to analysts. They're just fresh from school. So I said, yes, I know what I mean, and I mean what I say. Accenture puts you in more boardrooms than you can ever imagine or think. And within a week, there was one young analyst who rushed into my office and said, TA, you're right. I said, what? Said, my dad has been trying to get hold of Obo Tudeko for months now. And I went home telling him I was in the boardroom with Obo Tudeko. And so I can let him know that you've been trying to reach him. And his dad just couldn't believe what he was hearing. So what he came back to the office to say to me and to say to a lot of us was that value proposition where we say Accenture puts you in more boardrooms than you can ever imagine or think. The value proposition to the young people is you don't have to wait until you become a manager before you are exposed to the board of directors or the chairman of organizations. From when you come in, you can, as an analyst, you're exposed to the high and mighty, as it were. And that was the beginning of a mindset shift in every sense of it. So that story is one I love to tell when I talk about mindset shift, because mindset shift is really about culture. But in answering you, Babashola, I think the answer to your question, most organizations who are up to date and who understand that things have shifted, they must understand a few things. We do not do exit interviews in those traditional sense as such anymore. Exit interviews are done on the go. Exit interviews are done at the end of a project. And so why is it like that? Number one, organizations must understand that there's what we call a rebalancing of power. What do I mean? Well, since we're all religious, let me put it this way. Power has changed hands. Power is no longer with the big boss, with the chairman or whatever. Power fluctuates. Power is liquid across the various generation divides within the workplace. Secondly, it's about reenacting and reinforcing that value proposition. So at the end of every project, I want to ask people, what did you do well? How did that make you feel? What could you have done better? What would you do better the next time if given the same opportunity? So unlike the traditional exit interviews, we don't wait until the person is announcing that I'm leaving, because again, as HR people, we say, why should you do an exit interview after the person has sent the resignation letters? Because by the time they're putting pen to paper to write that resignation letter, they've already exited. I mean, they've left, they're gone. They're just marking time. They're just working out their 30 days notice or the 3 months notice. And if you really want to be callous, then you accelerate their exit and say, okay, I'll just pay you in lieu. Just go, just take your wahala and go. Again, wrong attitude, because we just haven't come to understand the mindset of this gig generation or even the new workforce. Oh, by the way, let me tell you this. I'm a baby boomer by birth. I'm a millennial in my heart, and I'm a zillennial in my brain. And I think that's the third thing I need to bring across to everyone, because the generation divide is real in our organizations, but most people haven't made the shift like I've done. And the other thing is we don't wait until we receive those letters of resignation before we do exit interviews. As an executive coach, one of the things I always coach the C-suite in terms of managing the shift and how they deal with millennials, zillennials, call them whatever, the new labor force or the liquid workforce, is to have this formula in mind. And it's a simple formula. And if you can use the simple formula at any time with whoever you're working with, obviously not waiting until the time they leave, then you'll be able to get into their skin to know how they're thinking or feeling, because those are the things that are much more important. What's that formula? It's a simple one that says performance equals potential minus interference. Performance equals potential minus interference. So when we hire you because you've got the skill sets, the necessary competencies to enable you perform, and we expect you to perform, right? So you hit the ground running and you're performing. And potential, everybody has potential, yes, regardless of how we hire or interview these days. Well, yes, I mean, for me, at senior levels, I wouldn't hire you for your IQ. I don't care if you went to Harvard. I would hire you more for your character, your behavior, those people management skills. But character, like you and I know, we can't buy it in the supermarket. It can't be bestowed on us, right? It's either we have it or we don't, but obviously for good leaders, it's honed and inculcated over time. So potential is there, talking about who are you, your abilities, your skill abilities. And then the key thing in this formula is the minus interference. Interference is anything and everything that's getting in the way of your potential and so affecting your performance. Let me say the formula again. Performance equals potential minus interference. So interference is any barrier, anything and everything, whether it's about flexibility in work hours, mobility, resources, technology, or whatever. But my question, therefore, especially when we're talking to people or doing the exit interview after a project, is for me to be bold, or for leaders to be bold, or line managers or supervisors to be bold to say, how am I getting in the way of your performance? How am I getting in the way of your potential blossoming, or for you actualizing your potential in working with us? That really is a tough one. And because obviously you have to be introspective, right? I mean, imagine if the young person says, "Oh, guy, you're the one getting in the way," or the way you talk to me or belittle me, or you don't walk the talk, you don't lead the company values, and things like that. So I guess the nuggets I've thrown out in answering your question, Babashala, is just to say, well, things have changed, but every organization, every leader should remember what is our value proposition, just like culture. Those value propositions can be dynamic. In other words, they can be flexible. We can make sure they're moving with the time. And if those value propositions are not static, but dynamic, being aware of what's going on and the fact that what got us here will not get us there, then it behoves us as line managers, as supervisors, to be able to walk the talk and model all that we profess or that the brand represents for us, so that at any time we can have wholesome conversations with our staff members and not wait until that famous exit interview, because by the time we're having that exit interview, it's rather too late. Rather, we want to have that continuous dialogue where after every project, or even on a Friday before now that a lot of people are working from home, it's just to check in. Checking in is about your wellness and your well-being. How are you feeling today? How's your family? Is there anything I can do to ensure your accountabilities or your deliverables are better enhanced? Or how am I getting in the way? Those have now become day-to-day conversations and not restricted to the traditional exit interview. Those kind of conversations have become more fluid so that they become a Monday conversation before a leader starts their Monday meeting with their team members, or they become a thank God it's Friday conversation. I hope I have shed more light. I hope I haven't disappointed you, because you did talk about the traditional, but the traditional is out of the window. Although many within my age bracket would hate me for this, because it's like throwing them out of the window as well. But I'm not. I'm just appealing to everyone who are baby boomers or old timers or whatever to say, power has changed hands though. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We've just heard from the baby boomer, who is a millennial at heart and a zillennial by mind, all three in one. Power truly has changed hands. What we've learned right now is that there's a need for a mind shift in our approach. The death of the exit interview, largely, it should now be project-based, more engagement with our employees, our colleagues on a project basis, or even just, knowing how your people, how they're doing, whether it's your Monday meetings, it's TGIF. It just really tells us that we need constant engagement. Mrs. Cook, I'm going to come to you now. And this is more about our recent reality to all of us. And coming from the pandemic, we all moved from the traditional brick and mortar approach to work, which if someone said to us back in the day, you want to work virtually, we all said, it can't work, it won't work, you can't work virtually. We've all learned the hard way that we can work virtually. We're having this meeting virtually. Now, Elon Musk, who's, I don't know if he's the richest man in the world now, but he's certainly top 5. He said to his staff, get back to the office. We can't manufacture by, using the telephone. And I was at a conference recently where the statement was made, yes, it's recent times, we're all working virtually, or we're having some kind of hybrid working arrangement, but that it's temporary. I don't know if it's temporary. I don't know if it's permanent. I know it is useful. I know some of my people are even asking for a 4-day work week. Some, I know working from home to some people then seemed like it was a benefit, an advantage, but things have changed. You need to consider mental health issues. You need to consider traffic. You need to consider the cost of your operations. The cost of diesel right now is approaching 800 naira. I don't even know how much it is. I'm just afraid I'm burying my head in sand. So if your business, wants to operate efficiently, do you want all the people in the building at the same time? That's assuming that you run your own building. Does it make more sense to have some of your people working from home? What do you think the future is in terms of our working arrangement? Do we continue to work from home? Will it be hybrid, or are we all going back to the office? Mrs. Coker.
Thank you very much. I'm going to.
You have 3 minutes, because yes. I think we just have about another 10 minutes.
I've got 2 stories, and they're going to be very quick. I remember the first HR Expo, Dr. Franca Ovaje of the LBS was talking about, and she gave a keynote speech, and she was talking about working from home, how organizations, and she told us a story of an organization that giving a man to work from home. And his wife kept asking him, darling, have you lost your job? You know, you can tell me I'm your wife, something, blah, blah, blah. And the man said, no, I'm working for more. Okay. And eventually the woman said to the man, darling, you cannot do this work. You are the man of the house. The children can see you working from home. It is not acceptable, right? That was in 2016. In 2019, we had the panel discussion just the year before the pandemic. And I was asking at the conference, and I was asking the panelists that, what do you think about flexible work, remote work, working from home? And so people, they were like, no, I don't trust, blah, 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 blah. And then came 2020, the pandemic. And whether you trust or not, people couldn't go to work. People had to work from home. So it happened to us. Life happened everywhere in the world and everything. So going back to your question, the first thing employers must understand that trust is the new currency in business. You must trust, you've employed this individual, you must trust them to work from home. You must trust them that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. The same way the employees are expecting we're expecting employees to trust you that you deliver on all your promises, whether it's employee engagement, employee performance, and everything. So trust is the first currency that drives everything within the work from home space. And now, even in Nigeria, if you're hiring people, non-tech people ask you, oh, I thought it was remote. Our recruiter as well asked me, I thought it was fully remote. We operate in hybrid. So you do 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. And we say, no, it's hybrid. We say, no, they want full remote. And as I said, it's becoming more candidate driven. It is not a benefit. It's what works well. I work better at home. Some people they have kids. And before, mothers had to stop work. There's cost of childcare, all sorts of things, even not even the cost. So now if they can work from home, if they can take their lunch break and take 1 hour to go and pick up their kids, it suits them. They want to be able to work and they still want to remain in the workplace. Elon Musk manufactures telcels and stuff. So there's some jobs that you obviously cannot. And I think obviously some people would leave that job if they have to come to the office. They're going to stop and say, I'm not going to work. But I think it was coming from the leadership angle, saying that if everyone is coming, all these guys on the manufacturing line are coming to the office, you can't be in San Francisco and we are in Texas and you're saying you're working from home, each to their own. But work from home and remote work is here to stay. It is not going anywhere. What works best for your organization? In the UK, they trialed the 4-day work week and they haven't made a loss and they've kept people on the same salary. So you're not going to say, oh, because you're working from home, because you're doing remote, we'll pay you X number of amount less than what people are working from. Productivity is productivity. If you're hiring some people now, in the UK, mostly people will just say, if it's not remote, they're not even going to answer, they're not even coming for the interview, they're not going to do it. So when people, I know the governor of New York or whatever it's called was saying it's time to get back to work. And people are asking, oh, what have you been doing? Playing? Obviously, people have been working from home. So when you say it's time to get back to work, being physically in the office doesn't mean that you're working. People are in the office half the time, they're browsing the internet, looking for another job doing, and when they see you coming, they start to paper push. Productivity when people work from home is more than when they work from the office because they're settled. Think about the Lagos traffic. You spend like 4 hours in traffic, 4 hours. Some people live in Ikorodu before they get to the office, before they get back home. So productivity is already down. So we have to think about it, what works best for is individual. Some people are social beings. They want to be around people. They want to come to the office. They're going crazy. Their mental health is not good for working from home. Some people, their mental health is not good for them. So you have to, as I said, trust is the currency of business. We have to talk about it. We have to look at the best thing. Individuals want to have individual conversations, but it is not something that it's not a phase. It's not going away. It's how best do we align it with our business? What do we do? If our business means that people come to see us every day, we can't afford to work from home because people are coming to us. But if I'm a consultant, all I do is work on my computer. I'm an analyst doing research and stuff like that. Do I really need to be in the office to deliver my research documents or things like that? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing. It should be industry-based. There's definitely a shift from where we used to be, and we just need to be a bit more open-minded as to what will work. What's for Jack may not necessarily be for Jill. So now I'm going to come to you, Lola Esson. And this is, touching on talent development. And you mentioned it earlier that you don't just want to limit your training to your superstars. And employers are usually divided on whether the organization should allocate its resources into developing only the exceptional performing individuals, or whether it should do it for the generality of its people. This would essentially necessitate some level of differentiated treatment of employees with talent, because the employer considers it economically beneficial. What side of the divide do you belong? I think I already have an idea, because you showed a lean, but we'd just like you to expand on that. Should we just focus on the superstar, or train everybody, knowing that they're living less than 2 years anyway?
So thanks for that. I mean, I think the first thing is I have to clarify that it doesn't mean the workplace is about equality. It's definitely equity. So meaning you should invest, obviously, in the employee that is helping you achieve your goals. But you see, the reality we have now is you've got to do so with the mindset that, okay, this person can up and go at any time. So you must have opportunities of replicating what the person knows. So I talked about consulting space being one where attrition is really, really unbelievable. But one of the things I have done to be able to stay afloat is I really don't have anyone on my team who knows something alone. So the minute you finish a project, you can be sure that the next time we're doing that project, you're not going as a project manager, you're going as an SME who will be training someone else to do it. So that way I have managed to balance. Of course, you will miss the ones that do the work, because managers gravitate towards the people who do very good work. But the reality you're seeing now is the same way we're sort of seeing an increase on the transactional side of employment. We also need to become a bit more transactional in terms of how we allocate resources that are scarce. Another thing is we need to look for cheaper, more cost-effective models of training. So the whole idea of I'm sending you all on the same training doesn't involve the people in the decision. You have MOOCs these days that give us the benefit of learning so many things. Let's use that as part of the enhancement so that the individual doesn't come to work for you feeling boxed in the knowledge they can acquire or the things they want to do. I mean, that's certainly something we do quite well at EY, where virtually anything you want to study is possible, paid for. But you have to do the work, obviously, to be able to get that. So I think we need to be a lot more creative as to how we put forward some of these benefits, because they're really not benefits anymore. They're now tools of trade. If you don't train me, what's the alternative? I'll do core work. But you need to make sure you're getting commensurate return, because it allows you get ahead, allows you to see succeed or survive in a very competitive space. And then maybe it's the reality now. So if there's anyone who's offering a job and there is no opportunity to work remote or flexi, you will struggle. You might get people, but it will be they'll be transiting through your office. So let's look for interesting ways of making it possible for people to do other things that matter to them apart from work. And of course, that's one of the benefits of the gig economy, because you're now seeing more short contract, short-based work. So we should do work in such a way that it's no longer 40 hours Monday to Friday, but you can make up your 40 hours. But of course, you need trust, you need systems, you need tools to help you achieve that balance. So that would be my contribution to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for emphasizing trust being the new USD. It truly is the currency that we're all using now, and we all need to use. David, David Brown, I'm going to come to you now with what will be the final question. And this is something that, Mrs. Akiso and Mr. So and I were on the panel for the Nigerian Association section on business law, I think a few years ago before the pandemic. And the topic we were dealing with was the millennials in the workplace. And the millennials seem to be the problem that the employers were complaining of. But now we have the Gen Z that the millennials are complaining of. It's so funny. We complain about the generation, and that generation is complaining about the next generation. But those zillennials are now the employees in our respective businesses. How can employers be better prepared for this new generation of talent we call Gen Z that are being churned into our businesses? And how can it from both sides be managed in light of the constantly evolving employment landscape? So the employer and the employee, the Gen Z wants it like this. They don't like processes. They don't like structure. They just want to, do it, and they want to be cool. They want to be engaged. They want you to talk. They want you to trust them. How do you strike the balance, David Brown?
Yeah, so nice question. So Gen Zs, well, I don't know whether am I a millennial. I think I'm a millennial anyway. But the thing is this, let me show you some statistics. So let me just talk about some statistics. So there's this session we did, or conference we did last year, and we got someone from LinkedIn to bring Nigerian data. They have the data of the professional Nigerians. And the one statistic, which probably I'll share later, is they analyze baby boomers, Gen Xs, millennials, and Gen Zs as far as skills levels are concerned. First, they said millennials in Nigeria are experts in digital transformation skills, while older generations have the highest density in business analysis and consulting. But the Gen Zs themselves, when it comes to certain skill clusters, so advertising and marketing, they're top. Actually, communication, they're top. And obviously, you've said so. They just say it as it is, right? So they're communicating directly. Design thinking and creativity, they're top. In fact, baby boomers are 10%. The skill cluster, those that get that skill are just 10%. Gen Zs are 21%. In design thinking and creativity, digital transformation, they're 48%. So while they seem to be very hot, they are the excellent people to do certain thinking, even strategy. Funny enough, strategy, they could do certain strategic initiatives far better than baby boomers, Gen Xs, and millennials. I don't know if you know about the toddler test that some companies do when they're trying to release a product. They take it to toddlers, take it to kindergarten. If a kindergartner can't use that product, then it's not ready for the market. So Gen Zs have that mindset. So you need to do almost like reverse mentorship and mentorship, right? Where you have people, Gen Zs, mentoring the older generation on the new ways of thinking, their new language of typing. Have you read a tweet from a Gen Z or a Facebook, a WhatsApp? It's a different language. It's a completely new language. So they need to teach the older generation, and the older generation obviously has to teach them certain aspects of certain things that only come from experience that they need to learn. So that symbiotic relationship must happen for you to keep the Gen Zs interested and busy. And since Nigeria has the youngest population in the world, I think 17.8 years. Yeah, a couple of days ago, I was in Germany. And I was talking to, I told them about this. I said, guess how many people in Nigeria? As in many questions, 40 million, 50 million, 80 million. Said 200 million. Guess what's our average age? 40, 30. Their average age in Germany is 46 years. That's the average age of the whole country, Germany. Nigeria is 17.8 years, 18 years. That's our average age. As in, it's scary, and it's also a huge opportunity that we have this huge power that we're not utilizing. What you need to give Gen Zs is, okay, do you speak coding? I mean, hopefully you speak coding. Everybody is a data company. All the data transformation thing, push them to Gen Zs. See how they work. What can you make, how comfortable can you make them in doing this critical aspect of any business, how you use data? Get that, push that to them, give them as much resources and training as possible. Make it interesting for them. Another statistic that I'll share with you is return on investment on internal mobility. Gen Zs need a lot more internal mobility in your organization. You need to survey continuously to understand when it is that they're getting bored, because they get bored very easily and they don't really care about this, lifetime work. They're not interested. They'll leave. So the LinkedIn study showed that in Nigeria, low internal mobility, the average time people spend in organizations is 2.9 years. But with higher internal mobility, they spend up to 5.5 years or 5.4 years. So imagine 2.9 against 5.4. So if you want to retain, you need to get the pulse of the entire organization, especially Gen Zs, understand when they're getting bored, talk to them, review them on after every project, and see how you can make things interesting. But I think the critical way you could kind of have that relationship is digital transformation. They're digital nomads. I think digital first, they were born with a phone. So in fact, I don't think if you ask them to write a letter with their handwriting, it's going to be that good. They were just born digital. So that digital transformation, it comes easy for them. So certain projects there, please bring Gen Zs there into those projects. And yeah, it will be a tough relationship. You need to kind of change a lot, change the way you manage people. I think it will be an excellent thing. You take a big advantage of the fact that they don't conform to your current status, because guess what? The world has changed, and they're the ones that will make you change, make you move to that change faster. So take good advantage of your Gen Zs, employ more.
Thank you very much for that, David Brown. The statistics, mind-blowing. 17.8, you said that's our average age. These guys are the future in a population of 200 million. You talked about digital transformation, that's where they are. They're the ones in the tech space. They were born with a phone. We need to unlearn some of our cultures. We need to relearn. We need to understand how to work with these guys. Yes, they need mentorship from us, but we also need mentorship from them. That's what I've understood from your last few statements. Ladies and gentlemen, we have, I believe, as much as possible, thoroughly, gone into this topic of workplace talent, retention, talent acquisition, in particularly the gig economy. We might have not have touched on the gig economy as much, but we've also given an understanding of what the gig economy is. We have a jackpot phenomenon that is what is threatening our respective businesses. We have the poaching phenomenon. As David Brown said earlier, he said you can burgle stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, you look across the fence and you see what your competitors are doing. That person is a superstar there. You go and grab them. There's nothing wrong with good competition. Mrs. Akisa has told us we need a mindset shift in how we approach the HR issues with our staff. Mrs. Coker has said, look, we're exporting talent, whether we like it or not. And she's one of the people responsible for exporting that talent. And I don't blame her. It's bringing in good income. If some of us have missed that, then, sorry for us. Lola has shared with us substantial information, statistics, and information on what is really happening in the workspace and what we're all suffering from. For me, I've had fun speaking with you all this morning. It now seems like we've come to the tail end of our session where we're going to take questions from, would I call them the audience now, or the digital audience? Because we're all acting virtual. But thank you so much for sharing with me. I have really learned, and I have really, I've learned significantly from you all. Some of the things that I know that my business faced in the past and is facing, I somewhat have now realized, so this is why I've had a few aha moments, just in the last 60 minutes or thereabout. So now I'm going to open up the floor to questions. I believe we have 5 questions in Q&A. I'll ask participants to please throw your questions into the Q&A. I know that there are many comments already that have been made, but I can't go into that. I'm restricted to taking the comments from Q&A. As I speak, we have 150 participants that are on this meeting. So I'll go into the first question. It comes from Folawewo Oshibo. And Folawewo says, attitude to work is always a major problem in the workplace. You recruit and train your staff for a specific job, well, you still have to tell him what to do almost on a daily basis. How do you correct this? I think this is truly a talent thing. There's a dearth of talent also in the business space. So do you need to constantly teach somebody what to do on a daily basis? Is that person, fit for purpose is another way I'll put it. And I'm going to throw that to Mrs. Coker. Okay,
there's something we call in HR, we say hire for attitude, train for skills. So if you get it right, David says something like that, where he said to do it. So if you have the person with the right attitude from when you are in the role, so you've trained them. So if they have the right attitude, you'll be able to, what's that question again? Get them to align with your organization, whatever. If someone has the right attitude, you've trained them, so they know, okay, we don't come late, because as I said, there's a bit of thing where obviously millennials were the first set to start to exhibit certain behavior in the patterns in the workplace, and people were complaining. And then we now have this Gen Zs, as I said before, they ghost you. They don't, some of them will not even resign, they just stop coming to work and stuff like that. But again, attitude is attitude regardless, whether you're Gen Z or a millennial or you're a baby boomer, you have the right attitude to work. So I think the first step is identifying those attitudes and then training them for the skills that you want them to do. And once they have the right attitude today, in HR, we say there are people who can do, won't do, or will do. So if you have the can't, won't do, or can't do, they're not going to get anything out of them. So I think sometimes our recruitment process starts from the sourcing and the shortlisting and the people that we want to put in those positions. So if this guy is fantastic, as I said, someone said, one of the panelists has said it before, fantastic, but they don't have the right attitude, they're going to affect the workplace regardless of if they're superstars, but the attitude, for lack of a better word, it's not good for the organization. So, yeah.
Well, there you have it. Hire for attitude, train for skills. Second question comes from Anne Rinu. And she says, well, nowadays you don't know anymore. That's another thing in the workplace and in the world. And, we're restricted to pronouns that we use, but we're still in Nigeria. So Anne is definitely a she. So Anne says, good morning, panelists, and thank you. Where does culture of the organization play in ensuring employees truly imbibe the corporate brand and identity? We commenced global outsourcing in the real estate world decades ago. Over time, my experience is that outsourced staff struggle with who they really are: identity, allegiance, commitment, loyalty. Your thoughts, please. I'm going to throw this at Mrs. Akisoya.
Okay, thank you very much. So identity is really about who am I? And that is very important. And like I said, the answer to that question starts with how we do our onboarding or new hire orientation programs. And a lot of the who am I or who are you is not so much about your role or your title, but the kind of value you bring to this organization. And that's why earlier on, I spoke about what's the company's value proposition to anyone and everyone. So it starts with the new hire orientation. By the way, I'm one that believes even when it comes to outsourced staff, we have to take them through a new hire orientation program as well, because we have to acculturize them into the culture of the organization they're providing service to, whether that service is remotely, in state or out of state or out of country. So it's about letting them understand who am I, or answering that question relative to the value proposition of the organization, and also be able to honor or live in line with the company's core values. It's almost as if companies no longer remember what those core values are, or what they stand for, or what they represent. Again, acculturization into the core values of an organization starts from the minute you sign up to work for that organization, whether you are outsourced staff, permanent staff, moonlighting, sunlighting, whatever category of staff you are. So we shouldn't just take it for granted that an outsourced employee is left on their own. They are part of the organization. And so they have to be weaned into who the organization is, what the organization stands for, and those behaviors that are required or expected of anyone and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Akisoya. So you have the answer right there. It's all about acculturation and gets you to the promised land. The next question we're going to take is from Winifred Dipolu. Winifred asked the question, could you please explain, exit interviews are done on the go. Is there a process to the new way of doing exit interviews? If yes, can you please give some pointers? I think Mrs. Akiso has sufficiently addressed this when she spoke, and I don't want to go back to her again.
Well, let me just
but
add,
if we have time. Okay, please go on. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe what the person who asked this question is looking for is a formalized tool or process. So we have what we call performance management in most organizations. Unfortunately, they're not done properly, I dare say, because most organizations don't understand what it is. So here are two simple explanations. Performance management is a process. It's what you and I do every day. It's the reason why we are employed. Whereas performance appraisal, which a lot of people focus on, performance appraisal is an event. And that's where we get it wrong. Why is it an event? It is done quarterly or every 6 months or annually, right? We focus on the wrong thing. Our focus should be to understand that performance management is a process. It's what you and I do every day. So exit interviews and performance appraisals are now done at the end of every project. Even when you come back from training or after any scalable work, there's a performance appraisal discussion. And I gave highlights. The supervisor asked, what did you do well? What didn't you do well? What could you have done better? If you had an opportunity, if you were in my shoes, how would you run this project or how would you run this organization? If you had to leave today, why would you leave? What else could we do that we're not doing, and help me understand how you're feeling now or after this project, what skill sets or competencies have been added to you? What more are you looking for? I always end every conversation with what more. And that what more is like getting you into their hearts and minds and their brains. So you know what else do they want that they're not getting from you. And that's the first clue in terms of if they had to look outside the window, probably they'll be going to an organization who can offer that. I hope that helps.
I'm sure it did. So it's all about performance management, performance appraisal, and your approach in how you're dealing with your employees. I'm going to go to the next question now, and then a few of the questions I may ask the panelists to respond to in writing in the interest of time. But I believe we still have another, so to speak, 23 minutes before we wrap up. And the question I'm going to right now comes from an Ngozi Oga. She goes, how do we handle management that does not believe in investing in hybrid working space and ICT in general? The culture of this is not how we have been doing it, and they are not even ready to learn from the new millennium workforce. Can I have Lola Esong respond to this, please?
Thanks for that. So I think it's generally I'd start by saying, I'm sorry, I had a bit of interruption there. So I was saying that it's important to note that what works for one organization would not work for everyone. And the journey is certainly a gradual one. So the first thing you want to start from is to explore your organization. And generally, the trust thing matters a lot. What's the arrangement like in terms of have we always done what we say we would do? And have we kept to it? And it works both ways. We also need to agree then in a sense. It also has to be gradual. You can't move 100% into hybrid, like maybe organizations like EY, where there's massive investments in tech and what have you. So you must pick what works for your organization. The next thing is to use success stories from other sectors, areas to tell the picture. And then I always say data, data, data. I find that so many of our colleagues communicate emotionally. People are leaving, they have work from home, people are going, but if the MD doesn't trust that people will do the work, there's some investment and some partnership that has to happen. So I think it's always gradual. We would use the data to reinforce or refine what works and what doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lolaison. I'm going to ask you also in that wise to please answer Tanimola Davis's question, which is along the same lines. You can respond to this in writing. And there's another question from Adiola Obisheson, which is also about trust, the CEO, and working from home. So I'll go to the next question, which is from Anne Reno again. And Anne asked the question, how do you measure productivity against the trust conversation? Output-based services sometimes challenging in our climate. Can I have David Brown respond to this?
Thanks for that question. And it's something yes, people struggle with. I think the first thing is data. Do you collect data on everything you do? How are your financials, for example? The most important thing again is identifying a metric. The productivity, what productivity metric do you use that everybody can measure and everybody agrees to? One excellent one that we use is total labor efficiency ratio. What is total labor efficiency ratio? It's simply, you're saying that, okay, most of what we do, I mean, at the end of the day, people are the most important resource in any organization. Take your total salary cost, divide that by you take your total revenue, divide that by total salary cost, you get a metric. Let's assume you get a 5.2x. So that metric, take that monthly over the last 3 years and see how that has changed over time. And then identify the correlation between that metric and increased profitability. And then say, okay, our company requires a certain level of profit and this to sustain itself. And this is correlated with the labor efficiency ratio of whatever. Let's see how we can improve that labor efficiency ratio. What does that mean? You're telling your employees that, look, there's a metric for us to measure how productive we are. And we want to see our productivity over time, which you can easily do. Take your financials and do that. In fact, the financials that people submit every month, management report, financials, that's boring stuff. I'm an accountant. That is for the auditor. It's not for running your business. You need to completely transform how you do financial reporting in your organization. Do those metrics, do productivity ratios and stuff that you're tying a financial number to a non-financial figure to actually see that correlation between productivity and actual performance. So get that, agree as an office that is how we're going to measure our productivity. Check what it has been in the past and then see, okay, what are best practices out there? Do some research. And then that trusting will come because we're showing your numbers and you're actually saying, okay, when productivity actually improves, you can see the effect. Now, when you do see the effect and you now convert your business to a business run by numbers and data, and you've tested it out for a while and it's working, then start making strategic decisions about your business based on those numbers and make that with the employees in the organization. So you say, okay, if we hit this target of productivity, this will happen. And if we hit that target, that will happen, and actually make it happen. Because at the end of the day, when you're not doing well, the numbers will show. So sharing that data with people improves trust, increases trust, but identifying a metric that doesn't change and you're using it consistently, that's the best way. I think that will help answer the question, hopefully.
Thank you. I see Lola is responding to a question. I think we should actually, Lola, do you want to take this in person? That's Bimbola Wright's question, which says, what specific suggestions are there for integrating gig workers into the culture of the organization, given that these are temporary freelance workers? Yes, please go on.
Is it the question on gig workers?
Yes, it is. The question on gig workers.
Okay. So I think the first thing to remember is it's only really in this part of the world that we demonize contract employment, but it's definitely changing. One thing is your employer value proposition has to be uniform. They are not less of employees because they don't get a 40-hour times 5 or monthly wages. It's the same thing. We also need to make sure that the way we onboard is also similar. I think David talked about culture a lot. You can't say because you are contract or because you work for me, I work for other people. You would need to make sure those policies around reward and reprimand are standardized. You've got to onboard them the same way. You've got to find and actually interview them the same way. Because at the end of the day, whenever I experience a bad outcome, having interacted with your organization, you rarely have the chance to clarify that it was a gig worker that gave me the experience and not one who's employed full-time. And it definitely is becoming an accepted way of working. From a point of view of protecting the organization, because there are lapses, as we found, from having a growing gig economy, you've got to up your game around risk management and cybersecurity. Because these days, you don't get a pass on somebody who is not full-time committing a crime or doing something untoward to your brand. So all in all, it's a full strategy, but it's essentially the same thing you would do for a full-time worker that you should do for gig workers. But again, we're saying gig. Also remember that it's gradual. I think it's important that as we have these conversations in Nigeria, we must remember that ours is a journey and transition in nature. We will get there eventually, but we must continue to build on the lessons and the insights we're getting. But being a gig worker doesn't mean I'm less. If anything else, abroad, they make more money being gig workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Lola. So I see David Brown is answering a question on Gen Z and ghosting. I'm going to go to Bisi Adeyemi's question. She goes, riding on the back of Ms. Rinu's question on culture, given the remote and hybrid nature of work post-COVID, are there practical tips on inculcating corporate culture? And I'll throw that to Mrs. Coker.
Right. Yeah, as Lola's just said, and David has said as well, our culture is our culture, regardless of how we work. So if our culture says the first time a customer comes to us, we are customer responsive, whether, as I said, a gig economy, working from home, whatever it is we're doing, that's paramount in how we address issues within our organization. So if it's with staffing, if within the employee issue, what is our culture as regards to this thing? It must be imbibed in everything that we do. This is our culture. This is what we do. This is how we respond to clients. This is how we deal with our colleagues. This is how we, this is our, if it's our 3 C's, if our 4 C's, this is what we, if you're customer focused, customer oriented, it must be imbibed in everything we do, whether we're working from home, whether we're using technology, whatever things that we're using. If we speak to ourselves daily on Zoom, we should not say, for example, now, how do we guide against our colleagues' emotion? So I know some supervisors want their staff to always be on their videos when they're having a meeting. So that's one example. So is it a culture? Is it a company culture? Or is it just because you feel that you want to see what I'm doing to know, little things, they're little things, and they all add to how our colleagues feel within the workplace, how we deal with our client as well. So if you're having a client meeting for the first time and we're working remotely, we should have a discussion beforehand. Are we going to use video? Are you able to use video? Can you be in a place where it's quiet or stuff like that? And then don't come and penalize me afterwards and say, oh, blah, 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 blah. I know that, yes, sometimes we have technology issues. Some people live in a place where it's very noisy. It's not their fault that it's at 2 o'clock, the mosque down the road is going to call to prayers. But if we had this discussion beforehand, like we're meeting a client, this is what you need to do and stuff like that. Again, it all boils down to how do we empathize and stuff within the organization. And those are the little things that we can put in place, embracing our hybrid working and stuff like that. But our culture, whatever the culture of the organization is standardized, and it cuts across however we work in our productivity and everything. And it must be how we work within the workplace. Hope I answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'll take the next question. And if in the meantime, Lola, so you can respond to the question from anonymous attendee on convincing CEOs who don't believe in working from home or hybrid working adoption. The next question is from Funto Anam. And Funto Anam mentioned very insightful conversation. In a situation where you work for a large corporation that is not as agile in responding to this new talent management culture, how can you implement some of these suggestions in a department/team without conflicting with company policy? David Brown, do you want to take this?
So without conflicting with company policy, I mean, this is a dicey one for the manager, isn't it? So I'm sure the company policy is also to make money and also to kind of be profitable. So if there is a way for you to kind of show how profitable this can be and say, okay, look, you know what, I want to just do a pilot. Yes, I know it's against company policy. Can we do a small pilot? And this is how we measure success. And this is how we measure progress around this simple pilot that I want to do. It reminds me of something that someone said that we did this presentation training, beautiful presentation training. And it's like, our slides are filled with plenty text. You can't tell me to come and start presenting one beautiful stuff when my manager wants to see details. And then I said, okay, so unfortunately you have to do double duty. You need to create the two presentations. Create those two presentations. Send your manager the detailed one and send them the one that actually gives more context and stuff. And eventually, after like a couple of months, stop sending that your new format and see what happens. And of course, what happened was the manager said, oh, where's the other report? I said, no, I was just doing that normally. No, bring the other report. So you changing culture is not easy, especially if you're not at the top. I know a decision maker. So you need to have a strategy around it, and you need to know you're going to do double work. And if you're ready to do that, then eventually, hopefully, it will change. But it won't be easy. But you're on the right track. Try and push on, and either get them to give you permission to do a pilot, or just go ahead and do both and let them see the difference.
Thank you so much for that.
Please, if I may just add to that, change management is incremental. We cannot do it on a large scale. So it's always advisable to start from what we call your circle of influence. And so start with that team or your team or your function or your department and pilot the change like David said. And then once you pilot the change and you see how it impacts the bottom line or even performance or even behaviors and attitudes and things like that, then you have data on your side to present itself to say, well, this is what this change has done. And then you now scale up. So change is always in increments, not on a large scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Akisanya. We have another 4 questions and we have 8 minutes remaining. But I see an interesting question here that I would like Ms. Akisanya to address. And it's from an Oluwatomi George. Oluwatomi asks a question. Please, when an organization is against you, deflates you or silences you for speaking against wrong employee practices, what can an HR do to navigate through this?
Okay, that's a strong question, because when an organization is against you, I'd like to say it's even a sweeping statement. But obviously, I want to believe HR is always a safe haven, in the sense that even if your supervisor or your line managers or the perceived orgas are against you, HR should be the go-to place. Your HR should always have a listening ear. And once they listen, they're the ones who are knowledgeable and experienced enough to be able to probe further. Now, if HR is not listening, which oftentimes happens in some organizations, or in fact, your HR is the one that pours petrol on fire, then I'm afraid it's time to get out, because then that is when you really speak of the whole organization against you. And these are the times I see, these are the kind of feedback to give when you're having an exit interview. If they ask you, why are you leaving? And then you tell them, because no one has listened to me, because this organization is not ready for change. The world is in the year 2050, and this organization is still in 1950, that kind of a thing. And but again, please be focused on the what and the why, and don't let your emotions get over you. A lot of us, when we complain about either systems, processes, or structures, we really get emotional. And so label it, call it what it is, and don't make it personal. Talk about the issues and not make it personal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question comes from Taj Shobayo, and it says, "Good morning, panelists. To my mind, for the short time, is diversity and inclusion of all generations not one of the way forward? Because in the end, it is sustainable productivity that matters, I think." David Brown, do you want to take this?
Yeah, so I can't agree more. Diversity and inclusion for all generations, yes. The key thing is when you're recruiting, I think it all comes back down to recruitment, right? Probably in the past, in my early years, I would recruit for skill and not for culture. So that's a completely wrong way. You need to recruit someone that's hungry to learn, and hungry to learn cuts across all the age groups, right? It's not only millennials or Gen Zs that are hungry to learn. As long as you're hungry to learn and you have the right attitude, I think that's great. And of course, you have the base level of knowledge, right? Base level knowledge. Which unfortunately primary schools have messed up. Not secondary or university. I don't know why we keep wasting time with them. It's primary education. So I agree with that. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's you employ productivity is extremely important, but please get data to measure it. So when you're having those evaluation meetings, you're using data, not I think you're not doing well. No, it's the data shows that things could be better. What can we do to change? And then remember what that statistic says about changing roles, right? Some people may not be so good at a particular role. Think about rotating and seeing if that skill set can be used elsewhere. So yeah, I agree 100%.
Thank you. So now we have another 3 questions and literally 3 minutes remaining. If I could ask our panelists to please respond in writing to the question from anonymous attendee and the question from Folawiwo Shibo, whilst we take the question from Funto Anam, which actually connects with our topic today, the gig economy. Funto Anam asks, how do we ensure accountability and measure performance for gig workers and those working from home? Mrs. Coker, do you want to take this? Whilst I have Mrs. Akisoya maybe respond to anonymous attendees' question, and Lola Esson and David Brown can respond to Folawe Oshibo's question.
Okay, productivity is performance is performance. We have set down performance parameters for every role. We have mostly for people that work in tech or even for gig economics, we have things like OKRs where we focus on key result areas and things like that. And we'll look at the outcomes. So how do you ensure accountabilities? What are sets? First of all, what is the set parameters for performance for that particular role? What are your expectations for the role? What do you want to measure? What are you going to use to measure outputs? What are you going to use to measure performance? Once you set those parameters, once you understand what you're looking for, and you have your result areas, your key result areas that you're going to focus on, you are able to measure performance, whether you're working from home, whether you're just on this gig for 3 months, after 3 months, every month. Okay, so if it's a role where it's a weekly measurement, this is what we want to achieve at the end of the week. This is what we want to achieve at the end of the month. This project, what are our project goals? What are the things that we want to get at the end of the project and things like that? So it's just having those set parameters for each of these key result areas that you want to measure, and then looking back at them each month, talk about its mid-weekly, send feelers. As David said, there are things that you can use with bots. They're automated things that you can set across. There's something called stand-uply. They're bots. They just come, if you use a Slack, for example, to correspond with your employees, every morning it sends them some stuff to just look at the different measures that you can use for this, for people working from home, using technology to get these things. But the most important thing is knowing what you are measuring. If you don't know what you're measuring, then you can't know what's whether they're performing or they're not performing.
Thank you very, very much for that, Mrs. Coker. We literally have 1 minute left. This panel has started with well over 150 attendees. And for the last 2 hours, we still have 152 attendees listening in. I must thank our participants extremely. Thank you so much for the, what I call it, listening ear and the attentiveness, for the comments that you've passed and the questions asked. We had about, I think, 15 to 18 questions in Q&A, and we managed to answer almost all of them. I have learned significantly this morning on learning some things and relearning some things that will help push my business forward, and the attitudinal change that is required to help to guide my team to retain the talent that I have and even attract new ones. Definitely there's need for a mind shift in the way we operate our businesses. There's a need, not just attitudinal change, but it's obvious that the way we assess our people, the creativity we use for those assessments is critical. Our engagement with them, the Oga at the top phenomenon is no longer the case. The employee is stronger right now than the businesses. They have options, including JAPA, which is the most substantial. One thing I know that we didn't really touch on is whether we can throw money in competition with poaching. I don't think money is the answer, because for a business to sustain itself, if you attempt to throw money at your competitor in poaching your staff, you will lose. There's more money and more dollar out there. It's been a very interesting morning for me, and I'll ask each panelist 1 minute closing statements. Thank you. We'll start from Lola Esson. We haven't heard you for a while. Is she still here? I think we may have lost her. She may have had some data issues. Again, that is part of working from home, hybrid, and the Nigerian situation. These are factors that we must consider when we make certain decisions. So, Mrs. Akisona, do you want to start with your final comments, closing comments? 1 minute.
Well, my closing comment is, if you're a digital migrant, that is, if you're a baby boomer, my advice to you is make friends with your children and your children's friends, and those millennials and millennials, and let them convert you to become a digital native. So digital migrants changing to become digital natives. And how that works in the workplace is we now have reversed mentoring programs. So I'd like to encourage organizations to try it out and embrace it. And secondly, a lot of us, we need agility to scale in terms of our workforce, agility in terms of our thought leadership, agility in terms of our mindset and behavior, as well as agility in terms of our value proposition. But remember, what got you here will not get you there. Thank you.
David Brown, do you want to go next? Your closing statement.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for staying this long, and thanks a lot for the excellent moderation too. And what I'll say is the gig economy is here to stay. I mean, there's no two ways about that. So you have to take advantage of it, both as an organization, as individuals. For organizations, you need to understand that employees are a partner in making sure that the organization makes progress in ensuring they're profitable. Whether even you're an NGO, some NGOs think that profitability, an NGO must have revenue higher than expense. And they may not call it profit, but if that stops, the organization stops and everybody loses their job. So you have to understand there's a partnership, right? Partnership between employees and the organization. And how do you kind of make that partnership work, regardless of whether it's a gig worker that you're working with, but how do you even transit to the fact that employment is that definition of what's an employee? has really changed, because that gig worker that has been working for you or doing some digital marketing for the last 5 years, to me, that person is your employee. And so you need to kind of rephrase or change who that employee is and see how you both as an organization and employees work together to ensure that goose, which is the company, survives in these trying times. So which means a lot of transparency, cultural shift, and ensuring that, look, we all work on this together to ensure we make ends meet and this company survives. So if you're in that partnership, I think regardless of gig or no gig, you will survive and thrive as a business and as individual employees.
Thank you very much for those closing statements from our panelists. We have now reached the tail end of our session. It's 11:05. We started at 9 o'clock precisely. I think we overshot by 5 minutes. And I know the people that I'm sitting with virtually are such that keep to time. Thank you so much to all our participants for being attentive for this long. I hope it has been as insightful for you as it has been for me. It's been an extremely rewarding morning listening to our panelists, and I will now hand over to the DG of the chamber. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. Thank you. DG, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Alukalaro, and thank you very much to the panelists. We really do appreciate the insightful comments. I will hand over now to our Vice President, Mr. Sheyi Adeyemi, to take us through the vote of thanks and announcements. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, DG, and thanks to everyone. I must say this has been an enlightening session, absolutely enlightening. We want to, on behalf of the NBCC, would like to thank our speakers, Mr. David Brown, Mrs. Erefa Koka, Mrs. Titlayo Akinsoya, and Mrs. Lola Esson. Thank you so much for your insightful views and contributions, and also to our moderator emeritus, Mr. Baba Alokuraro, has done a fantastic job this morning. Thank you so much for a great job. We'd also like to thank our patrons and council members that have joined this session. And of course, we can't forget our sponsors, the new practice, for being there for us. And of course, Mr. Nnamdi Okonkwo, the chairman of the Professional Service Group, as well as the entire Professional Service Group of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce. And of course, the NBCC headquarters team for putting this together. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen that have been a part of this session over the last couple of hours, thank you for your attention and thank you for staying with us till this very time. Thank you very much. I'd likely want to take you through the upcoming events. The NBCC Energy Group event comes up on 20th of June this year. We'll encourage you to be a part of that event as well. We also have the NBCC Programming Academy. The opening ceremony and the kickoff is scheduled to take place on the 4th of July. Our membership induction program also comes up on the 14th of July, 2022. We're reaching out to Abuja. The NBCC Abuja Members Evening is slated to hold on Friday, this week, July 22, Friday, July 22, 2022. We'll also like to intimate you with the NBCC MSME Business Optimization Clinic. This is scheduled to hold on Tuesday, July 26. Please endeavor to be a participant in any and all of our programs. You can be sure that with NBCC, there's never a dull moment. And lastly, would like to call your attention to the NBCC Plaza. Would like you to make the NBCC Plaza your go-to place for your events, and you will get very good and affordable offers in the use of our facilities at the NBCC Plaza. And finally, if you are interested in becoming a member of the Chamber, please visit our website. That's www.nbcc.org.ng, or meet with our membership team at the registration desk. You can also follow us on our social media to be well informed of all of our activities on NBCC_NG on Instagram, and Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce on LinkedIn, and Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a wonderful morning. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to the DG as we close the event.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeyemi. So we'll just take the Plaza video as we exit. Thank you very much.
Stop.